p.m. and on Saturdays from 8:30 to 9.
Monticello, Maine, USA.
Good evening. You're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper. Tonight we continue, ladies and gentlemen, with the documenting and the sourcing of those documents of the treason that has occurred in this country that is leading us into a one-world totalitarian socialist government. The end result, eventually somewhere down the line, will be world communism. You can bet on it. You can take it to the bank. And if you don't believe it, you stay tuned and listen to the proof. I defy you. I dare you to prove me wrong. Listen to everybody. Read everything. Believe absolutely nothing unless you can prove it in your own research. We give you the source of the information. We give you the documents. We tell you where you can find them. Don't believe what I say. You go out. You look it up. And if I'm right, you must join the fight for freedom in this country. If you don't, you are sentencing your children and grandchildren to a life of slavery in a one-world totalitarian socialist, which will eventually become a communist government. Brazil, which refused to support the same measure by abstaining on the vote, has already proclaimed its disapproval of any measures which the foreign ministers might take to deal with Castro. The Brazilian government has officially called upon the United States and other hemisphere nations to coexist with Cuban communism. How many friends does this leave the United States on the all-important United Nations Disarmament Committee? You count them. I'm sick. From Mr. Clark. Readers of the record will note that my distinguished colleague made certain statements to which I take strong dissent. First, he said, every day more and more people show a growing concern for the preoccupation of the State Department and some people in high places with the issue of disarmament. Second, he said, I think it is naive and unrealistic to be preoccupied with the question of disarmament. Third, he said, we know that the communist conspiracy has no intention of coexisting with us. Mr. President, I take strong exception to each of these three statements. In the column which the junior senator from Texas inserted in the record, its author, Mr. Ken Thompson, referred to what he calls, as stated in the article, one of the most incredible documents ever to emerge from the foggy corners of the State Department is a bulletin entitled Freedom from War, the U.S. Program for General and Complete Disarmament in a Peaceful World. I continue to quote from Mr. Thompson. As skeptical as I have always been of the measure of good sense and loyalty within the State Department, I never would have believed that these people we call our diplomats could so completely and unabashedly advocate the surrender of American rights and sovereignty until this bulletin appeared. Mr. President, I submit that both the junior senator from Texas and Mr. Thompson are pretty far off base in the comments which I have noted. In the first place, the program entitled Freedom from War, the United States Program for General and Complete Disarmament in a Peaceful World, is not some pamphlet dreamed up in what is referred to as the foggy quarters of the State Department. It is the fixed, determined, and approved policy of the government of the United States of America. It was laid down by President of the United States, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, in a speech he made before the United Nations on September 25th of last year. A speech which I think will rain down through the corridors of history. That program, when it was submitted by the President of the United States, had the approval not only of the State Department, but also of the President's then disarmament advisor, Mr. McCloy, who was its principal expert of the Department of Defense and of the Atomic Energy Commission. It represents the fixed and determined policy of the executive arm of the United States government. Ladies and gentlemen, that is an admission by Senator Clark that what I read to you several nights ago was, in fact, exactly as the document says, the official policy of the United States government. And I will now continue because there's much more here. If individuals, whether on or off this floor, desire to criticize that program, they should turn their criticism not against some subordinates in the State Department, but against the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of the United States of America, the President of the United States. I recall to members the dramatic statement made by the President in that splendid address before the United Nations to the effect that he challenged the Soviet Union to a race for peace, not a race for war. In that connection, I suggest that the program presented by our President at that time has by implication at least the full support of the Congress of the United States. Mr. President, in my view, the President's program for total and permanent disarmament under enforceable world law, under enforceable world law, is not only that of his administration, but is also the kind of program which Congress envisioned when last summer it passed the statute creating the United States Arms Control and Disarmament Agency. That bill was passed on September 8th by the Senate by a vote of 73 to 14, only approximately 2 weeks before the President made his historic appearance before the United Nations. The bill was passed a few days later by the House of Representatives by a vote of 280 to 54, as expressed in the first annual report of the United States Arms Control and Disarmament Agency. Successful arms control and disarmament negotiations are, of course, the chief purpose of the agency's existence and the goal to which its energies are directed. Therefore, Mr. President, I submit that the executive and the legislative branches of our government are substantially in accord in supporting the President's program for total and complete disarmament under enforceable world law. Enforceable world law. And I suggest that it is neither naive nor unrealistic, as was suggested by the junior senator from Texas, for the Congress of the United States and the people of the United States to take an active, keen, and present interest in the subject of disarmament. Far from its being naive to be preoccupied with this subject, I suggest that disarmament, world peace, and world law not only should be, but are, the constant preoccupation of all intelligent and educated men and women who desire to survive in freedom. And ladies and gentlemen, I, William Cooper, tell you that's the biggest crock of bullshit that you'll ever be fed in your life. In your life. Now, let me read you the biography right out of the biographical directory of the United States Congress. The volume 1774 to 1989. Senator Clark Joseph Still, a senator from Pennsylvania, born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, October the 21st, 1901. Attended Chestnut Hill Academy, was graduated from Middlesex School in 1919, Harvard University in 1923, and the University of Pennsylvania Law School in 1926, was admitted to the bar in 1926, and commenced the practice of law in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania during the Second World War, served with the United States Army Air Corps 1941 to 1945, attaining the rank of colonel.
Senate
Controller of Philadelphia, 1950 to 1952. Mayor of Philadelphia, 1952 to 1956. Member of the Board of Overseers, Harvard University, 1953 to 1958. Elected as a Democrat to the United States Senate in 1956. Re-elected in 1962 and served from January the 3rd, 1957 to January the 3rd, 1969. Unsuccessful candidate for re-election in 1968. Professor, Temple University, 1969. And here's the kicker, folks. President, Rural Federalist, United States of America. President, Rural Federalists, United States of America. And I'm not going to go into who they are. I want you to look it up. We've already done it on past programs of the Hour of the Train. Just in short, though, it's a group devoted to the destruction of national sovereignty of all nations and the uniting of all nations